So, welcome back to the 30-Second Success podcast, where clarity, courage, and connection come to life through the decisions that define us. I'm your host, Laura Templeton, and today we're diving into the bold, messy, and meaningful moments that help us move forward in business and in life. So, let's jump in. I'm here today with Rob Fenstermaker, founder of the Warrior Leadership Protocol at the Warrior Forge. Welcome, Rob. Thank you so much for being here. How about giving us your 30-second message, my friend?
Well, thank you, Laura. I would love to do that. What I do is I empower men to start pursuing the life they want and stop settling for the life they need. Because when they do so, they become better husbands, better fathers, more impactful leaders, and become the man that they want to be.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, what's something people are surprised to learn about you?
Oh, wow, that's a loaded question there. Something that people are surprised to learn about me. Um, as a man, I've come to understand that we don't always have all the answers. And I've had the opportunity to lead, and I definitely don't have the answers. And I've never been that type of leader that thinks like I have all the answers. And I don't want, no, because I want to empower people around me. When I don't have the answers, I'll go to my team. That's why they're there. They're there to support one another. And I embrace that idea of servant leadership. So, um, I may seem confident, but inside, there's always that little voice. And I think we all have that little voice, regardless of where you're at, what position you're at. If you're leading, that little voice is always there. And sometimes we got to be careful to not let that voice take control of us.
I love that. I love that. And I think one of the things that, I love about that is we all struggle, right? We
Mhm.
all struggle with that thing, that little voice that's always challenging us. A lot of people say it's there to keep us safe. And I truly believe that, in some respects. And a lot of times it's just old junk that's, been stored
Oh,
in our
yeah.
minds that we need to be able to recognize just as that we can
Yeah.
then release and go, you know what, for today, I'm going to try something different. Right. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that vulnerability. It really makes a difference. And I think that's one of the things that I love about the work that you do. So share a little bit about the Warrior Forge and where that came from. What really inspired you to jump into something so unique and different and powerful?
Yeah, it kind of goes back. I mean, I've had the opportunity to lead and be a part of men's groups for over 25 years. And there's something different when you bring men together. Just the conversations that we can have, not the superficial. Yeah, we can have the superficial conversations, but the most meaning I've ever got with other men is when we have those deep conversations. And because as men, we have to have that veneer of that we're always strong, that we're always on. And sometimes as men, you know what, we just got to have somebody that we can be a little vulnerable with. And not that the conversations that we have with our wives that we're trying to hide something from them, no, but I think that the conversations we can have with other men when we support each other and we got each other's back is we can share, what it is that concerns us. We can share where we're at in life, and we can give those deep introspections. Some of the greatest wisdom I've ever gotten were from other men that we were able to be vulnerable with one another. When I first, kind of stepped into this space in my faith walk, I was new in the faith, and it was men who reached out to me and just kind of, gave me ideas of and messages of what it really meant to be that man. And I have always remembered those conversations. Those men have always had a special place in my life, and I appreciate what they've done for me. And so for me, it's my opportunity to do that. I'm at this stage of my life where I want to, pay it forward to those who come behind me. I want to leave this world in a better place than when I got here. In order to do that, I have to raise up men to be those leaders. And those men that I raise up can be those leaders in their community, in their families, in their places of business. And they do it with intention. And that to me is my opportunity to leave my mark, leave my legacy in this world, is by giving a piece of myself to somebody else so they can take that and run with it.
I love that. Giving a piece of yourself to others. And I think that, that really espouses what it really means to be in that leadership role, right? We are giving we're sharing our wisdom, we're sharing our hearts, we're sharing the impact that we want to have so that our role in this world carries on. And I think you mentioned, faith and how that plays into it, into your conversations with your client, with your clients, with the people in your men's groups. And I find that very similar in a lot of the women's groups that I belong to. And it's so funny because, and a quick story, I was running a women's networking group, and one of the women who was very uncomfortable, very first time there, brought a man to the group. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this in a men's group. When there's a man in the room, I noticed that a lot of the women would check themselves, look at him before they would answer the questions when we were doing our topical
Hmm.
conversation. So I love the fact that you're bringing men together in the same way that I've experienced women being together, where we're a lot more open with one another when
Yeah.
it's women who understand each other. They don't feel as vulnerable being in front of a group of men and women together. So very interesting
Yeah.
that you've had that experience from the opposite side of the aisle, right? So yeah, because I've led a lot of women's groups from the different perspective, and you're right, way more vulnerable, way more open and honest, and willing to share, which I think is beautiful. So so have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a fast decision that felt scary, but ended up being exactly what you needed?
That's a good question. As being married, my wife and I will be together 35 years this October. And
Congratulations.
we've had those opportunities. We're raising two children, but you've got to make those snap decisions involving your children. And both my children, they went through life altering experiences. One was when they were young, and the other one was when they were older. And it's in those life altering experiences that you got to decide, what am I going to do here? And you just got to you've got to go with what you know is best. And you can't be afraid to make that decision. You got to make the choice. And as leaders, we have to make that choice. And you've got to understand that every choice we make is going to have a consequence. There's going to be a consequence attached to it. And when you get in the habit of being a leader and just continuing to make choices, you start to understand what those consequences are. And when you start making better choices, the consequences become better. So you learn through repetition, what choices to make. And to get back to your question, I can think of both of those incidences with my two children. One was life threatening, one wasn't, but it was still a very critical situation. And you have to do what's right for everybody involved. You've got to assess the information you have at hand. I was a former Army officer, and as an officer, the expectation is you've got to make the decision, you've got to make the choice of what we're going to do. So you try and gather all the information possible, and you have to learn to just kind of think on your feet and make that choice. And that's what builds confidence not only in you, but it builds confidence in those that you're leading when they see that. Yeah, we're going to do this. We're going forward. And here's the thing about once you make a choice, you got to decide. And to me, I understand that the word decide, there's the suffix CIDE, that needs to put to death. So that any kind of word that has CIDE, that needs to put to death. So once you've decided something, you put all other options to death and you're moving forward. You got to go all in with it. You can't um, kind of go in it timidly. If that's what direction you're going to go, you're going to go all in. If it's wrong, hey, you learn from it, because I absolutely believe that failure can be our greatest learning tool. And you've got to exercise that option and just see what happens. And if you fail, it's not the end of the world. Learn from it and keep moving forward.
I love that. Learning from our choices, right? And I think that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing, learning from what happens when we do make the decision. And I love what you said about continuing to make those decisions, right or wrong, it's the choices and we learn from them. And then the next time we have to make the decision, it gets like, okay, remember what happened. One of the things that I find and I find very interesting is, and I would love for you to talk about this a little bit, is where the Warrior Forge name came from. Tell me the significance of that name, because it's a pretty intentional name. And you know me, I'm very, very
Yeah.
interested in the intentional naming of a business. So tell me a little bit of the background around the name of your company.
Yeah, I mean, I think as men we have that warrior spirit within us, and too many men have just kind of let that fire of that warrior kind of go down to embers, and it's time to reignite it. To me, we talked about faith, and there's some great examples of warriors in the Bible. To me, there's no greater warrior than Jesus. I mean, he stood on principle, he stood on his foundation, and he knew what he was about. But the one warrior in the Bible that I love more than anyone is a man called Eleazar. He's one of David's mighty men. And if you know about him, there's a passage about him where he was fighting the Philistines, and he took the front, and he slew the Philistines while grasping his sword. And he took down 600 Philistines that day by himself. And he grasped that sword so hard that his hand froze to the sword. In the Bible, the sword is recognized as truth. And as men, we got to grasp our truth. We have to grasp our truth. So back in the day of Eleazar, if you decided you want to take somebody a prisoner on the battlefield, first thing you had to do, you had to chop off their thumbs. Why would you have to chop off their thumbs? Because once you chopped off their thumbs, they could no longer grasp that sword. And the world, there's an attack on man. We got to be honest. There is an attack on men in this world. And the world wants to chop off the thumbs of men so that we can't grasp our truths. And our enemy, I'll just say, the enemy of the faith, he's fine with us, understanding, what the Bible says, but he wants to grasp off or wants to remove our thumbs so we can no longer grasp that truth. So that's where the idea of warrior came. And the idea of forge, when you're in a forge, you're going through the fire. You're going through the fire when you shape metal, and you got to forge it. How do you forge it? You put it in the fire and you pound it. You pound it and you shape it. And you pound it and you shape it. You put it back in the fire. You pound it and shape it. So that's what the idea of the warrior forge is about.
Love that. I love that. And I love the significance of it. It makes so much sense. And you're absolutely right. We are all being forged by fire.
Mhm.
And the story about, that, just coming against the enemy and standing tall, is biblically based. So I love that you brought that into the name of your company. So, quick reminder, if you're enjoying this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast. Your support helps us reach more people with stories, strategies that inspire real connection. So, Rob, what's a challenge you've overcome that most people don't see from the outside?
Hmm. It really kind of it got me into this space. The challenge that I had was that I was just a man going through the motions of life. I was just going through the motions. I did everything that the world would tell you got to do. Go to college, get a job, buy a house, get married, have a family. I did all those things. And as a man, I just felt a little empty. I just felt that I was just accepting, what I needed in life. And that's what the world tells you need. Okay, so I did. But there was just something missing in me. There was something missing. And a lot of that, for me, what was missing was relationship with other men. I mean, we get busy in life. We get into, as a newly married man with children, you get busy with life, and you just kind of miss those connections. And I just started to realize that that something felt empty there. So reaching out to other men was the one thing that just kind of opened some doors for me. It opened doors for me in the sense that I absolutely believe it helped me save my marriage. I absolutely believe it helped me become a better man, a better father to my children. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Am I a perfect husband? Of course not. My wife will tell you that I'm far from perfect. Huh. But I do the best I can. I do the best I can with what I have. And I each and every day is an opportunity for me to strive more, to learn more. That's how I enter each day. What can I learn today? What can I learn today? What can I learn new today? And every day gives that opportunity. And the thing that I love about each day is there's never going to be another March 26, 2026. This is it. This is your only opportunity for this day. So what are you going to do in this day? And one thing that I really had to come to grips with is I hung on too strongly to my past. I hung on to it too strongly. There was regret with that, things that I had not completed, not done. And if you sit with regret too long, it can lead to shame. And I wasn't to that shame point yet, but I was definitely in that regret space. And I just had to let go of my past. It's over. I can't change it. Can't change our past. Let it go. And I also learned, don't be anxious about tomorrow because there's no guarantee you're getting a tomorrow. So why worry about something that has not happened yet? And the other thing I really came to terms with at one point is I started to realize 99% of the stuff that I would worry about tomorrow never came to fruition. So it's just ridiculous. So live for the day. Live for what you can learn from today, and you can always learn something. You can either read something, listen to something, have a conversation with somebody. There's always an opportunity to learn something new. And I've gotten in the habit of what am I at the end of the day, just writing down what I learned today. It could be something simple, it could be something profound. But what did I learn today?
I love that. So you keep a journal with what did I learn today?
Yeah, I do journal.
I
I
love
have
that.
journaled for over 25 years, and I have saved every one of those journals.
Hmm.
My wife has asked me, I keep them on the bookshelf. She's asked, can we get rid of these? I'm like, nope, we're not touching those. You just leave there. And I like pulling them off the shelf every now and then because I always date. Wherever I write something, I always put the date. And it's always interesting to me to see where I was at on that day, what I was thinking about that day, what I was going through that day. And it gives you an idea of where your growth is happening, where you were and where you are now. And if anybody out there is not journaling, I would encourage you to start. Just do it.
Hmm.
Do I do it every day? No, but I'm pretty diligent at it. And I go through different phases of it. Like right now, I'm in this phase wherever, and I'll do this periodically. I just want to write I am statements. I would just spend
Hmm.
open up my journal in the morning and just write I am statements. Just write as many as I can. And how I challenge myself is not to write the same I am statement that I wrote, the few days before. Just write one's new. And if you do that for 30 days, you go back and you look at all these I am statements, and it tells you something about who you are. And the other thing, gratitude journals. Just write, the gratitudes. Write 3 gratitudes every day and 3 different gratitudes. And at the end of a month, you'll have 90 things you're grateful for. And it
I
can be
love that.
something simple. It can be something simple. It doesn't need to be profound. It can be, hey, I'm grateful for looking at this bird at my bird feeder right now. Okay. You're grateful for it
Yeah.
because it gives you that feeling of gratitude that this is cool.
And I think sometimes some people overthink what a journal should be like, and everybody's journal is different, and some people just need to start, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's where just getting started, eventually it starts to expand and flow. Uh, it's even in the writing process, that was something that I had to learn, was that just when you write, at first
Yeah.
it's just going to feel messy, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden the
Yeah.
flow starts to happen and you find your rhythm. And I think that's what happens with a gratitude journal. You start to go deeper and deeper as you experience, writing. You start, and I think the biggest thing about a gratitude journal, which has happened for me, is that I stop throughout the day and go, oh yeah, I'll have to make sure I
Yeah.
remember that and put it in my
Yeah.
journal tonight. Right? You
And I
start to
would encourage,
recognize things throughout the
yeah.
day.
And I would encourage people, if they haven't started it, don't do it digitally. Just pick up a
Right.
piece of paper and a pen.
Yes.
Yeah, we live in this digital world, but sometimes you just got to go old school. And there's a different energy, and when you have a pencil or a pen in your hand and are writing it on a piece of paper or in a journal.
Absolutely.
And my handwriting is horrible. Sometimes I'll go back and I can my stuff can be real chicken scratch because I start getting thoughts and I start writing fast. And I'll go back and I'm like, what? Wait a minute, what is this word here? And then
What is
I do my best to decipher it. Um,
it? Yeah. So what's something you've had to unlearn in order to grow?
unlearn in order to grow.
I know that's what it is. Questions that it's like, what is it? and it may not necessarily be an
Well,
unlearning. It may be something that
yeah.
transitions, right? There's
You
that
know,
growth.
I talked about I talked about letting go of my past, and I had to unlearn that just because something happened in the past, that's not who I am. That's not who I am. That may have been
Mhm.
that moment that of when I had this thing happen in the past. Okay, in that moment, that may have defined what that moment looks like, but that's not me. And I
Mhm.
was hanging on to that stuff, and where I was creating an identity around. And what I've had to learn is that I'm a reader. I love to read, but our life is a story, and any great story has different chapters, and those different chapters kind of form the entire story. So just because something happened in chapter three, that doesn't mean that the whole book is related to chapter three. That's just part of the story. It can build on four, five, six, and moving forward. So what I had to unlearn is yes, those things happen in the past. Learn from them. Learn what you can from them and move forward. Don't hang on to them.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you brought it back to what you had already shared and went a little bit deeper this time. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
So if today's conversation got you thinking about your brand, your message, or how you're showing up in the world, come check out the Brand Success Hub. It's my on-demand resource center packed with tools, trainings, and templates to help you get clear, consistent, and confident in your brand. And yes, Rob has agreed to share a 10-minute teach with us on the topic of living the championship life. So definitely come check that out. Just head on over to 30secondsuccess.com and click on the hub, and I'll see you on the inside. So, what advice would you give someone facing a moment of indecision?
Don't sit in it too long. You have the information you need. Excuse me, I know this itching here. Sorry about that. You have the information that you need to make that choice. Just go with it. Just go with it. And indecision just leads to stagnation. So take that step. If it's wrong, adjust. But so we've got to get out of being stuck in neutral and start moving forward. And so yeah, don't let that don't let that indecision hold you back. And I think that when you start making as a leader, and we're all leaders, and in some way, we're all leaders. You can say it, but in some way, if nothing else, we're leading ourselves. And in order to lead yourself, you've got to understand the direction you want to go. Um, so keep that and focus. One of the things that I've recently done, someone encouraged me to do this, and it's a great exercise. And I know for women, it's vision boards. For me, it was a vivid vision. I wrote it out. And I know a lot of women, they create vision boards, but I literally wrote it out. And I wrote it out. Okay, I wrote it out. So, and how I did it was 3 years from today. And I was very intentional about what I was experiencing, what I was doing, what had just happened. So I was writing it in the present tense, but 3 years from today. And I will go back and reread that. And it keeps me focused on, okay, if you want to do this, you need to keep moving forward. Because I had some big aspirations in that, big aspirations. And so when I first wrote this, the first time I read it, it scared me. I'm like, well, but I, so I think when, to kind of get back to the question, indecision, if it scares you, good. There's a reason it scares you because you've got to do something. Just make the decision, make the choice, and let it happen. See what happens.
Love that. Love that. Great advice. Great advice. Just, make a decision, make a choice. You'll learn from it. Whether it's the right one or the wrong one, you're still going to learn from
Yeah,
it. But I love that
yeah.
you shared about the 3 years visioning. One of the things that I learned years ago, and I actually do it with my mastermind group, is, we talk about future casting, right? What do
Yeah.
you envision for your business? And then I have my clients do it's called a playbook, and it's where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Hmm.
And then where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then where do you see yourself a year from now in order to get to that 10-year mark, right? So we start to plan out what are the steps we need to take to get to that 10-year mark. And everybody that I've taken through that playbook and just like you're experiencing, when they look at it and from the perspective of where they want to be in 10 years, it changes how they approach their business. It
Oh yeah,
changes how they
yeah,
approach conversations because now they know what direction they want to go in. It creates a path for you to move forward in. And I love that you are doing that from the 3-year perspective and that you go back and look at it. That's the key. Go back
yeah.
and look at
Go
it,
back and look at it.
right?
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, and yeah, go back and look at it. And I'm also, my next step is I'm just going to record it. And when I go for a walk, just listen
yes.
to it. Just keep listening to it because you
Yes.
you listen to those kind of things. It starts to imprint in your brain. This neuroplasticity. We change the rewiring in our brain. And it's a thing when you really start to
Right.
focus. People call it manifest, whatever.
Yeah.
The woo-woo word is manifestation, and I'll use the word manifestation, but I'm telling you, it works because when you start to change that rewiring in your brain, all bets are off at that point. You have it in you. And really 95% when you have a business, it's that 6-inch space between your ears. That's where the battlefield is in each and every day. And you got to be ready to
Yes.
engage it. And things like that, just being clear, the stuff you put into that space is going to make all the difference. I've learned to just cut out the noise, cut out the chaos. There's a lot of crap going on in the world right now, and the old Rob would have just paid attention to that. I would have gotten all anxious and nervous about everything that's going, 10,000 miles away. But I just start to understand. I look at my front yard. Is that war going on in my front yard? No. Well, why am I worrying about it? It's not impacting me. It's not impacting me personally. Um, so I say, yeah, I just look around. I've learned to be the CEO of myself, and this is kind of the
Mm,
attitude I adopted when I was in corporate. Just be the CEO of yourself, and that area where my office and my desk was, that was my domain. So everything within that area, I was in charge of. Right now, I'm the CEO of my business, so everything in that, I'm in charge of. So just keep your focus into that and don't let the noise of the world. One of the best things I've done, I quit watching the news years ago. I just quit watching it.
yeah.
And I just, to me, that was such a freeing thing. Such a freeing thing.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I love what you're saying about this whole idea of focusing on what's in front of you, right? Focusing
Right.
on the here, the now, present, what you can affect, and that's the biggest thing. What do you have control of? Not necessarily control of, but what can you affect?
Well, no, we
What's in
do.
your
We,
realm of,
we, you know,
what do you have
we do.
influence on?
We do have control over our attitude. We do have control over how
This is
we're
true.
going to engage with the situation. That is within our control. And if
Absolutely.
you're going to fly off the handle, if you're just going to be in chaos, then you've lost control.
Right. This is
And I
true.
absolutely
This is
believe
true.
that, yeah. And I embrace the idea of getting uncomfortable. Just be uncomfortable
Mm,
because that's where
I love it.
true growth happens. You got to let yourself be uncomfortable. That's where you really start to understand what it is you can do. And I say this jokingly, but it's true. We just want to be comfortable all the time. That only leads to one thing in me. It just leads to you just sitting on your couch all night, binge watching Netflix with a Costco sized bag of chips.
I love it. So, Rob, what's the best way for people to connect with you or go deeper into your work?
Yeah, just connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm all over social media. You can find me on LinkedIn, Rob Fenstermaker. You can find me on Substack as well. I'm very active on Substack and LinkedIn. Just reach out to me. You'll find me all over social media. I do have a Google page. I've had a lot of people reach out to me there. So this is the best way. We live in this virtual world right now. One of my passions right now is somebody who grew up analog. What responsibility do we owe this generation that's only grown up digitally? And that's something I'm very
Mm,
passionate about. And I think about the analog life I grew up in, and just how things were different. We were allowed to be bored back then. We don't want our
yes,
kids to
we
be bored
were.
today. We're allowed to be
No,
bored. And we were
right.
when we were bored as kids, that's when we did amazing things. And sometimes we got in trouble, but we did amazing things. We figured things out. We created things. And we need to let people be bored again so they can start getting that creative edge back.
Mm, I love that. Thank you so much for that final thought. I totally appreciate you being here with us, Rob. It's been wonderful catching up with you again. I I'm truly blessed by you being here with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Laura.
you
I
so
do
much for
appreciate this
joining.
opportunity.
Oh, so good to have you here. So thank you so much for joining us on the 30-Second Success Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss next week's inspiring conversation. Until then, stay in your brand, trust your voice, and remember, success is just 30 seconds away.